documentary. I'm still watching it. I watched a lot of it yesterday, and there's so much happening in there. And every single lesson of that documentary comes back to money. And we talked about that a little bit yesterday, so I'm not going to belabor the point again today. But if you want to get a really good finance class, watch the Diddy documentary. Called the Reckoning or something like that. I think 50 Cent has something to do with making the documentary, which is interesting because he's not really exactly friends with Diddy. So I'm sure Diddy's happy about that. But it's really a deep lesson about money and power and how money can be used to not just acquire power, but money can be used to control other people. But then things have become very relative. He makes there's conversations where there were people who said, it seemed like Sean never wanted to pay us, and he always wanted to keep us financially dependent on him because the financial dependence was his source of power. And I said, wow, this is really interesting because if this is true, this is kind of how the world operates when it comes to American workers. They don't just do this to black people. Of course, we're the first people that they want to come after, but also they do that to American workers, period. If you remember after the pandemic, the big problem they had was that nobody wanted to go to work because they were making people comfortable. They given out so many checks and so much money that people were now like, well, I don't really want to go to work. So there became a whole push to get people to come back to the office because they didn't want to come back. They said, I really didn't enjoy being stuck in corporate slavery. I want to go find out who I am. I want to do something that's meaningful for my life. I want to make sure I'm first in my life and not the corporation. So they started pulling that money back specifically to get people to go to work, right? So, or even if you look at the conversation about immigration, a lot of immigration is driven by the low cost of labor. That's what it comes down to. It's like, hey, we need people that are going to be happy making $8 an hour, picking tomatoes or whatever, right? And then they'll turn around, they'll say something really hilarious, almost insulting, really, in my opinion. Well, they'll say, well, these are jobs that Americans won't do. The Americans don't want these jobs. They're too good to do these jobs. Black people are too good to do these jobs. And they never ever notice, they never ever state the other half of the sentence, right? They never finish the sentence, which is to say that most Americans don't want the job because you're not paying anything to do it. You're paying them garbage. So why would they want a garbage job with garbage pay? Does that make sense? Let me know if that makes sense to you. All right. And let me know if you can hear me okay. Can everybody hear me? Am I coming through good? All right. Okay, good. All right. So ultimately, if you want to get a good financial lesson, go watch that Diddy documentary, man. That thing is just full of gems on money and how money just deceives people, how money can motivate people. And here's the crazy thing. Again, if it's true, if what's being said in this documentary is true, again, it's all, opinion. It's all people's perspectives, right? But, there's a narrative forming here for sure. But it's crazy to me that half the damn time, the people that were promised and controlled by all this money, they didn't get paid. It sounds like, so that's the worst part, right? It's bad enough when somebody uses their money to control you almost like a prostitute, but it's even worse when they don't even pay you, right? You already sold yourself for $2 and you didn't even get the $2 at the end of the day. The guy who a guy named Keefe D. I'm a black man. I'm the same age as Tupac. Our birthdays are very close together, actually. And so I followed all that Tupac drama like in real time. It was a real life soap opera for young black men. And I don't know if anybody else remembers that, but literally the guy, I believe this guy Keefe D. Keefe D's been talking for years. If you follow the internet streets, Keefe D's been telling this story for like 10 years. And for whatever reason, no one listens. The police don't investigate. It's very strange. It's strange how that works, right? It makes you wonder if there's federal involvement in all of this, right? If there's kind of like a puppet master making sure that certain people don't get arrested or whatever. But that's beside the point. But anyway, Keefe D says he killed Tupac. And his story makes sense. Like it passes my Spidey senses test. He's like, yeah, and then we stopped at the liquor store, and then I saw a dog on the corner. And after I saw the dog, I was wondering what kind of dog that was. And the dog came up, so I gave him some kibbles and bits. And then I went got me a 40 ounce, and me and my cousin was talking about the game yesterday. Like it's real specific, right? And it's a very credible story. But if you remember, the motivation for Keefe D killing Tupac was that he claims that Diddy offered him $1 million to kill Tupac and Suge Knight, and he says that he was supposed to get he got what he actually I think that half a million was going to be paid because he only got Pac, he didn't get Suge, and Diddy did not pay him, or actually scratch that. Diddy, I think they said Diddy did pay, but the money did not get to him. I think they gave it to somebody who's supposed to give to somebody else, and everything these all notice how many of these conversations involve money, right? And so as a person who has spent my life studying on a scientific level financial psychology and how money moves people, how money changes things, how money shifts perception. This is just fascinating to me. I'm like, ooh, there's money again. Ooh, they talking about money again. Ooh, money. Oh, you dated him because of the money. Oh, you thought he's gonna make you famous. They when he signed the artist, right? They would get these contracts, and one lady said, when I showed my contract to my attorney, he giggled because he's gonna give you fame. He's not gonna give you fame and fortune. Like so he giggled when he saw the contract, right? So ultimately it's like money, 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 money. Everything was if you take the money out of the equation, money is the star of the Diddy Diddy's not the star of that documentary. Money is the star of the documentary. Money. So if you want to learn finance and you really want to learn it for real, I want you to pay attention carefully in that documentary to every single time somebody brings up money. When they bring up money and they say, this is how much we paid to get rid of Tupac. This is how much Suge had to pay to get Tupac to sign the death row. This is why we went to the such and such awards to do those shows because we were going to go then fly to Europe and go make some more money. Right? Like, I want you to really look and see how money and everything connected to money is the driver of the whole entire narrative. Every single East Coast, West Coast beef was created, manufactured by magazines because they knew that readers would translate to more money. Money, 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 money. Isn't that interesting how money pops up in everything? So I would say um, that if you can get over your addiction and temptation when it comes to money, you probably have about a 90% chance of having a better life than you would if you don't let that addiction go. If you're financially desperate, your life is going to be harder than somebody who's not. That's why the greatest gift you can give your children is financial security, because then at that point, money can't lure them into stupid situations. They're not going to go. They're not going to, go to a Diddy party to make money. They're not going to be willing to. Even when one guy was talking about the footage, like people were asking, like, well, how did I saw a guy who claimed to be a former security guard for Bad Boy Records, and he said, well, how did 50 Cent get all this private footage of Diddy's life? He said, well, when you want all that attention, like Sean wanted, he wanted a videographer around him 24 hours a day. So then what happens is the hours of that footage start to rack up. The videographer sends a big invoice and says, okay, you're paying me $80 an hour. I worked for 120 hours. Now you owe me 10,000, whatever. You owe me, this amount of money. And Sean would look at the invoice, money, there's money again, and he'd say, oh, I don't want to pay this because it's too much. So then at that point, he said that the footage then becomes available to the highest bidder. There's money again. 50 Cent became the highest bidder. So in my warped little mind, I'm thinking, okay, number one, Sean did not measure the risk of him deciding not to pay somebody, right? That now, okay, now this footage could be out there and anybody could get access to it because now they're not loyal to me anymore because people tend to be loyal to the people who give them their money. You pay people. That's one rule I always have with our organization. I told my team, I said, I'm very proud of the fact that in all the years we've been operating, we pay everybody. We pay everybody. So, if money's tight, I might say, hey, I'm gonna have to catch you later. We'll get you. We need a little more time, but we're gonna pay you. And part of the reason that you do that is because you don't want people out here mad at you who are also financially desperate because then the loyalty is gone and they'll sell you up the river. And so really, in Diddy's whole effort to weaponize his economic power, I think that he was probably missing some areas that might have made him vulnerable because now you got a whole string of people who all say, I worked with this person. I was supposed to get paid this much. I got paid nothing. And that creates a lot of problems and enemies later on, right? And then on top of that, there was another time money came up. There was a producer who produced an album for him that was very close to him, and the album won a Grammy. And he says, all I was paid was $29,000 and I didn't even get my money. So there's money again, right? So everything's money, money, money. Like, why were you sitting next to Diddy? Why were you at his house? Well, because of money, right? Everybody's looking for the money. And this is big in the Black community because there is a scarcity of economic resources that often drives human behavior. And so if you can elevate beyond that scarcity of resources, then that's one of your first and most significant steps toward economic elevation. Part of economic elevation is not just elevating yourself economically so you can have all the power that comes with money. It is elevating yourself economically so that money can't drag you around by the nose. The same way if I'm hungry, if I'm starving, then nothing matters to me. I can't focus on anything other than finding food. Do you understand? If my belly's growling, then I don't want to hear you tell me about Jesus, unless you bringing me a sandwich. I don't want to hear you telling me about the theory of the universe unless you got a steak dinner in your back pocket, right? The only way you can talk to me about complex mathematics and the secrets of the universe is if we're talking about this over lunch, right? And so, really, if you look at the way, pay attention now, if you go back 500 years and you look at the way the Europeans came to Africa and they were able to control the minds of so many African people. They didn't just capture their bodies, they captured their brains. What was the first thing they would do? They would offer them some food. They would say, okay, here's a sandwich, because you're hungry. But before you eat the sandwich, I need you to read this Bible with me. Or while you're eating the sandwich, we're going to talk about the Mormon faith, right? So this is why you don't want yourself, nor do you want your children to be going through the world looking for a damn sandwich. It's no different from like it, and it relates to almost everything. It really goes back to that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like I just saw a video this morning where they were explaining something that's really simple, where they were saying that little girls who are validated by their fathers, who have fathers that love them, they're not as quick to go sleep with a random dude because they're already filled up emotionally to the point where they don't need validation through meaningless sex, right? And they also tend to be more feminine because they feel safe. They don't have to be masculine to protect themselves because they had a masculine man who loved them and wasn't trying to sleep with them, who only had one goal, which was to serve and protect them. Like that's the only goal, right? And this man who was literally her pet, her literally like a pit bull that was working on her behalf and wanted nothing in return. She grew up with that, and so when she gets out into the world, she doesn't feel like she has to be rough and tough and mean and all that in order to defend herself. My daughter had a friend who was she was a boy basically. She'd become a boy. She walked like a guy. She had tattoos up and down her arms, and she would kind of give the thug look. Like when you saw her, there was nothing really feminine about her. She would like even play basketball, and she would like grab her jock. Like, and I'm like, I'm thinking, what is she grabbing? There ain't nothing down there, but okay, I get, well, there's something down there, but it ain't but whatever, right? I'm not judging. It's life, right? And one thing that she told me was she said, I said, so tell me her story. Tell me about her. She said that she was molested as a little girl. And in her little girl mind, she said, well, if I want to be safe, if I become a boy, then nobody's going to mess with me. And I'm not saying this is true in every case. I know life is complicated, but literally it was that simple. That was literally her logic. Her logic was that if I'm a tough man, if I'm a tough boy, if I'm a dude, then ain't nobody gonna try to do to me what they did to me when I was 3 or 4 years old. So then you wonder, like, what would have happened if she'd had a strong daddy right there, right? There's a reason they wanted the daddies gone, right? So the same thing. So the general idea, though, the general idea is that we all have these basic needs. And if you're operating and vibrating on that low frequency, you haven't elevated. There's that term economic elevation. If you haven't elevated beyond your basic needs, then those basic needs will define you and they will limit your life. They will limit your possibilities. You will never be able to find out who you truly are because you have to dedicate 100,000 hours going to work every day to satisfy basic needs. You'll be like, I remember even my parents when I would talk about dreams and hopes and possibilities, and they would say, forget about that stuff, boy. We trying to pay some bills over here. So I'm trying to figure out who in the hell decided that your job in this world, your purpose in life, was to spend thousands of hours at some factory just so you can pay bills. That ain't life. That is not living, man. That is not where you're supposed to be. I'm sorry. I really hope that we will all agree to give our children and grandkids the gift of allowing them to elevate just enough. They ain't got to be rich to do this. Just elevate just enough. Like reduce their addiction to the financial or whatever, just enough that they can look around and say, okay, now that I got this money thing behind me, what else is there to life other than money? Like, what are some other things I can do that are really going to fill my soul? Because a dollar bills can't fill your soul. All right. So let me play a clip for you. There's a clip on my Instagram that I put up, and I wanted to share this with y'all because I feel like this is also interesting as well. This is an interesting conversation point. My Instagram is Dr. Boyce Finance if you want to follow me. And and also don't forget the Black Wealth calendars are available if you want to go take a look. The 2026 calendar, you can go to blackwealthcalendar.com and take a look at the calendar if you want to put Black Wealth principles on your refrigerator. You are a product of what you do every day. And so if your kids and your family, they're seeing Black Wealth, 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 then guess what? Black Wealth is more likely to come and visit you. And also, before I show you this clip, I want to acknowledge, I asked you all to send me stories, send me your transformation. Let me know what's going on in your life that where you benefited from some of the stuff that we've been doing together in the Black Business School. And I'll send out the link again, but so far I have so many responses that I want to try to get through some of those. But some of the transformations have been pretty remarkable. I see Lamont Crook. I want to mention Lamont. Lamont, if you're here, shout yourself out. He says, because of you, I learned about the stock market and to start buying stock in 2019. And he says, my wife and my boys appreciate the continual sacrifice Dr. Alicia and yourself make every day. All right, you're welcome. Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Marvin Dixon says, while working, I had a 401k through my workplace. In 2007, I was laid off, so I decided to use the money in the 401k to start a business. Things didn't turn out as planned. I didn't understand investing on my own. But one day in 2016, I watched a podcast by Dr. Watkins. I have followed Dr. Watkins every day since 2016. Wow. I have a much better understanding of the stock market and have amassed a portfolio of various ETFs. Yes, yes. I'm not saying that starting a business is bad, but 80% of Black-owned businesses fail. So you got to be really, really careful and make sure it's something that you really, really love enough to work through all the kinks that are inevitably going to be in your way. One method of investing and building wealth it's a little dull, but it's dull in a good way, is exchange traded funds. ETFs are a beautiful way to build wealth. There's so many people that become millionaires just by buying into these ETFs and not even thinking about it, So I love that. I love the fact that you made that move. He says, my wife and I have also set aside different accounts that are designed to take on specific things. For example, we have a household account for just home repairs, car repairs, vacation account, and emergency fund. I started a blogging platform to share with others what's been shared with me. I also encourage people to start following Dr. Watkins. Wow. Thank you, Marvin. That's cool, man. So if you're here, put your blog in the comments so other people can follow you and support you. And there's more. I saw one brother who said that his net worth, he was driving an Uber and his net worth went to $315,000. So I just want to share some of this to encourage everybody that is doing well or making a difference, or if you're doing something in your life and if it's hard, just know others are in it with you. But then also, if you're succeeding, or if something has happened and you've uncovered something, you figured out a pathway, something has transformed, I'd love for you to share that with us. I'm going to put the link in the comments for those that want to share your story. I won't. So many have come in. I don't know if I'll be able to share everything, but I want to see them all because I really, it helps me. It helps me to understand if this is actually working or we just here talking. We ain't here to just talk every day. You could be watching cartoons. You could be out twerking. Like, well, why would you be sitting here listening to me if we're not out here, if we're not trying to make a difference? Okay. All right. So anyway, let me move to something I thought was really intriguing. And I know this is new, but I'm going to do this anyway because it was interesting enough. I saw Roland Martin and Jamal Bryant, two guys I know pretty well. I know Roland really well. He don't like me, but I don't dislike Roland. Roland's just he just kind of stays mad sometimes, but it's okay though. I respect the platform he's built. I really do. He's good. He's a good journalist. And Jamal Bryant and I, ironically, we're in the same family. We were in the same family in Ghana. We were both at the same time. Incorporated into the Kubio Kansi family in Ghana. And so my Ghanaian name is Kabu. And I don't know his Ghanaian name. I should probably know that. And Michael Roberts, he's out of St. Louis. He's nice guy, rich. He's known for being running $1 billion worth of companies. I don't want to put his business out there, but he's cool. He's the Nene. He's the big daddy, right? So when I see him, I say, hello, Nene. He says, hello, Kabu. So he's a good guy. But anyway, so here's a conversation they had. And I'm going to play the conversation and I'm going to play my short response to what they said because I think this is really important to understand in terms of how we navigate what it means to build Black wealth and Black power economically and otherwise, what it means to transform Black families together. I'm going to play this now. Give me a yes in the comments if you can hear this. So let me know if you can hear it okay. I'm sharing my screen in 3, 2, 1, and go.
On the street corners who are complaining. Stokely Kwame Ture said, you cannot find me any African American that has made a difference for our people who was not in an organization. Wow. He said, you cannot be powerful. A change agent as an individual doing your own thing.
Let me say that Roland is correct. Organizations are extremely important. Organizations allow you to have systematic power. If you're going to fight systematic racism, you have to have a system. Individuals can't beat a system. That's like one person trying to defeat a whole football team. Here's the problem that comes with being Black. Many African American organizations are compromised. Many of these leaders of these organizations are compromised. This has led many Black people down the wrong path and into bad situations. So here's what the middle ground looks like in my view, in full respect to what they're trying to say. African American people, at the end of the day, must absolutely positively have enough critical thinking skill to be able to, on an individual level, make a discernment regarding what move is best for their family, because there's always the threat of being misled or being put in as a pawn in someone else's agenda or being dragged around in a direction that you don't want to go. At the end of the day, you have to remember the implementation of any of these ideas comes down to the individual and the family. If the goal is to have stronger Black families, and I'm the father of that family, then the implementation belongs to me. So I have to have the critical thinking skill and the discernment to decide what that next move is going to be. If the goal is to build family wealth, then I, as an individual, have to have enough critical thinking skill to make that decision, to put the money in the bank account, to make the investments, to start the business, or whatever the case may be. If you're really talking about improving the lives of Black people, that comes down to the individual. When it comes to improving the lives of Black people, when it comes to family and relationships, that comes down to the individual. When it comes to improving Black wealth, that comes down to the individual. So organizations can play a role for sure, but the individual is ultimately responsible for the decision as to whether or not they want to implement these ideas, which therefore requires discernment to make sure that you're implementing ideas that are good for you and not bad for you, that the agenda is yours and not somebody else's, that you're not being sort of dragged along into somebody else's honeypot. My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins. I'm a finance professor. I teach. Okay, so let me know if you got the point there. Let me know if you got what I was saying. Okay, I want to, and here's the thing, right? As I try to get more mature, I want to make my point without it seeming like it's like a beef or that I'm criticizing what they say. When we were younger, it'd be like, yeah, you're wrong. You need to shut up. I don't want to do that. I have to back up and try to do my part on that. But clearly, I want to challenge some of that in the sense that I think that Roland has a good point that institutional organizational power certainly makes a difference. There's no doubt. I've mentioned to you all before that in economics is very gang affiliated. That if you want to win the economic war, you have to have a gang. You know, your family is your first gang. That's what you build that gang up by having children and by forming relationships and by supporting each other, right? Corporations are an economic gang. Apple Computer is an economic gang. They wear the same logo, they have the same mission, they share resources, they have a code of conduct. Do you understand? Does that make sense? I'm wearing Indiana University's logo. That's where I went to school. That's an economic gang. They're a multi-billion-dollar institution. They have rules. They have a way of moving forward. So institutional power is extremely important. It's also very important to understand that when you're talking about institutions and systems, the only way you can defeat systematic racism is through the development of alternative systems. You have to fight a system with a system. So it's if I want to defeat a football team, I need a football team. I cannot defeat a football team with a football player. Does that make sense? I can have Tom Brady and Deion Sanders at their prime, and they couldn't even beat a high school football team. Just those two playing by themselves, right? So my point is to say that we really want to appreciate that for sure. The challenge for being black, though, is that there are so many people that are playing big bank, take little bank. They are basically these massive organizations and institutions that have been in existence long before we came along that are operating and playing chess. Well, a lot of us are playing checkers, and they see black people as assets. They see black people as assets that can be used to fulfill their agenda. I am, without a doubt, completely convinced that many of our biggest movements, from the civil rights movements to the Black Panthers, etc., were a fragmentation. They were a tiny part of a bigger movement. It might have been communism. It could have been something else, Marxism. It's not a coincidence when the Black Lives Matter movement comes along and the leaders are all trained Marxists. Now, mind you, I want to be clear. I've studied Marxism enough to know that I agree with some of the principles of Marxism, but Marxism is not a black first ideology. Do you understand? Marxism puts Marxism first, and Marxism started with Karl Marx in Russia solving Russian problems. That's not a B1, that's an R1 philosophy. Do you understand? That's fine. That's fine if that resonates with people. But what you really need is you need something that's very specific. If you want to solve a black problem, you got to put black people first. And what that means for each person, it's gonna differ. It's gonna differ for everybody, right? It's gonna differ for everybody. So what I would say is that the reason that is very important for you, in my view, I encourage you to maintain your individuality or maintain your individual critical thinking skill, because really at the end of the day, all of you at some point will be a part of or one of the leaders in your own little economic gang, in your own little institution. And only you know what's really going to matter for your family. Only you know what makes a difference. Only you know what it means to move forward. And I've seen so many examples where we join a group and we're all in on the group. We're giving to the group, and the head of the group is answering to a bigger master who is compensating that one individual at the top for the management of the entire group. They're giving them money, they're giving them power, they're giving them resources because they say, okay, Diddy, you control the African American community. We need you to tell them who to vote for. And I'm vehemently against that. I think that you should tell yourself who to vote for. I think that you should hear every idea. I think you should be open to alternative perspectives. I think you should never let somebody tell you, well, don't listen to that person over there, or you can't listen to this person over there. No, you need to listen to everybody and hear all points of view, and then you come back to your family and say, okay, this is what we're gonna do. Do you understand? Like I'm tired of the overseer. The overseer mentality in our community has been the number one thing that's held us back for so very long. I see people getting manipulated economically in churches. I see them getting manipulated by corporations. They suck you in as employees. They want you to be consumers. They want you to vote for their politician, not your whatever it is. I don't like any of that. I don't like any of that. And so yeah, as a person who is the head of an institution myself, I want to reiterate to you only be a part of what we're doing to the extent that it serves you and your family. And I want you to be able to point to tangibles. I need you to be able to look at your family and say, okay, my wife and my kids are better off because Dr. Boyce is in our lives. My wealth is higher because I was coming to class. I'm happier and I'm freer and I have a better strategy because this guy was giving me some game that was helping me to figure that out. If you can't make that conclusion, if you can't connect those dots, then I do not want you to just blindly follow what I'm telling you to do. I want you to discern that. And some of you may get to the point where you say, okay, this doesn't fit me anymore, or I've outgrown this, or I don't really like this guy, or I don't whatever it is, right? So I think at the end of the day, that's the answer, in my opinion. I think that black leadership to some extent in the old school traditional format needs to die. It needs to just be killed, and it needs to be decentralized. In business, right now, let me give you an example. Okay, you may have heard me talk about this merger. How many of y'all saw? Give me a yes if you saw that Netflix is trying to buy Warner Brothers. Anybody seen Netflix, that whole thing? So just so you know, as a shareholder of Netflix, I'm not happy about it because my stock went down because Netflix is overpaying for this merger, but that's beside the point. Because I also own stock in the other company, Warner Brothers, and that stock went up. So I made money over here and lost money over there. It's just like game is played. But here's the deal. Netflix is trying to buy Warner Brothers. And one of the biggest risk factors in this merger that makes me wonder if it's going to happen is that what's going to happen is the Justice Department is going to get involved and probably accuse Netflix of violating antitrust law. What does that mean? Antitrust law means Netflix is going to likely have almost not quite a monopoly, but too much concentrated power in the entertainment industry. And for that reason, a lot of critics are saying this merger isn't going to work and it shouldn't be allowed because there's too much power for one company. So the remedy when that happens, and the greater fear, and here's what's crazy is it's not just Netflix that's trying to do this. On the other side of the deal is you have Paramount. Paramount is the competing bidder. Well, Paramount is owned by a guy named with the last name Ellison, who is the son of Larry Ellison, who is a good friend of Donald Trump's, who owns Oracle, and they own data centers. And there is an argument that sounds quite reasonable that he wants to control Warner Brothers because he wants to control media. And why would he want to control media? Well, because when you control media, you control propaganda. And when you control propaganda, you can control the minds of people. So he's got the data to understand how your brain works and the algorithms to control your mind and the propaganda he wants to plant into your soul. And that's also why he wanted to buy TikTok, because TikTok and Netflix are two companies that are known for having the absolute best algorithms known to man. Nobody can figure out how they do it. So there is a very rational, very logical argument to say that their goal is not just to control what you're consuming, but to even spy on you because basically they take all this data of what you're doing, what you're watching, everything else. They call their friends over at the CIA, and next thing you know, you can monitor all citizens and you can control what they're thinking and what they're watching on TV. Right? This is an argument that's being made. You can make of it what you want. But here's the common theme and what's going on here is you have a scenario where people are at risk of being manipulated by an agenda of some overseer who's gotten them to become part of some sort of collective, some sort of cyborg. And it's going to build wealth for the people at the top, build power for the people at the top. The people at the bottom, you're kind of just being moved around like pawns on a chess table. And so the remedy to that, if the Justice Department is doing their job, is to spot these monopolistic structures and break them up. You decentralize them. Does anybody remember when anybody old enough to remember when AT&T got broken up? Yes or no? Anybody old enough to remember when they were? I think they were about to break up Microsoft, and they did break them up a little bit, not too much though. You remember that, right? And you so you decentralize when you start seeing power concentrate and you want to maximize individual liberties. You find something that's a little too big and too clumpy, and you say, no, 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 chop that into pieces because we need to spread that out. So black leadership, in my view, needs to be decentralized. For too many decades, we have had individuals competing to be the HNIC, to be the guy, to be the main man, to be the one who that everybody follows, the one leader that every black person gets behind and gives all their money and loyalty to. And I don't think it should be that way. I think that that's failed in so many cases because not only is it risky, but it's also it's risky in the sense that they can easily stop something like that. But it's also you have a problem where you'll have individuals at the very top. You know, you'll see Al Sharpton living really well, but then you'll see a lot of other people whose lives haven't actually improved as a result of anything that's actually happening at the top. And I say this as a person who had that experience of being right there in the room with some of these individuals. So my argument is really simple, and I don't think you can I think I'm not saying you can't disagree with it, but I think it's a solid point that decentralization of black leadership is what I think would make a greater impact on families. And that's actually quite similar to the way the stock market operates. And a lot of people think the stock markets only make rich people rich. That's not true. Any person of any income level that invests consistently in the stock market that gets their own little piece of the corporation is able to build their own little pile of wealth, to build their own little bastion of financial security. So now, mind you, you still have the corporation that's going to do what it's going to do. So it's not quite a perfect analogy, but the point is to say, I kind of want you to focus on getting your little piece of it, whatever that looks like for you. Right. So that also requires you to have a certain mindset. It's really hard. To some extent, it's a failed argument because most people don't have the courage to think for themselves and to truly do what's going to really work best for themselves and their families. A lot of people are afraid. They don't know what's going on. They don't understand things. So you'll get these leaders that say, "Oh, don't figure it out. Don't worry about it. You just do what I tell you to do." And that's very, very dangerous, I think, when you're black. So I really would love to see everybody embrace the idea of critical thinking, some degree of independent decision making, where for your family, you look at those basic ideas, those basic measures of quality of life, health, wealth, and relationships, and you say, okay, this is what we're going to do. You're the head of that family. You're the father. You're the mother. You're the grandma. You're the grandfather. You're the uncle. You're the mentor. You're the leader, right? Be the CEO of your life. But what you don't want to do as a CEO is not have advisors. So I do not want to be a black leader. I probably kind of am for some people, and that's okay. I'm not, it's fine, right? You can't kill traditions or whatever. You can't kill habits easily. But at the very least, all I really want to be is an advisor. I just want to be a person that's like, okay, if you say, hey, I talked to LeVar Scott yesterday. You know LeVar? Anybody? We should talk about LeVar. LeVar is a young brother, 22 years old. Just so you know, update on LeVar. He's a NASCAR driver and he is killing it. I don't know if he won the championship this year in the ARCA series, but I know he was the points leader for a while. And good news for LeVar. I was really hoping he would get some kind of. We sponsored him in the Black Business School. We got him in some races, but we couldn't get him in the big races because I mean those are so freaking expensive. I'm like, bro, I can't write you a check that big. But we wrote some checks, just like we wrote some checks for D1. We write checks for Angel Stanton King's organization that protects the babies that where their mothers choose not to terminate, things like that. So we have these little things at King Randall School. We sent money to them. And so LeVar called me and he told me a couple things that y'all should know about him and bring him in here. One, he got a modeling contract, right? Because he's on Instagram and he's got these muscles, and apparently the little girls all like all that. So now he's modeling, but he's also driving, and he just got a big contract with the Xfinity series, which is the next step up from the ARCA series, and that was a big deal. That's a multi-million-dollar situation, and he's doing some other stuff. I saw him at the Nike, visiting the Nike campus, so he's doing really well and I'm really proud of him. And so the reason I bring up LeVar in terms of advisors is, with LeVar, I'm his friend, and he says, "Hey, I've got this extra money now. I want to make sure that I'm financially secure long term." He says, "I recognize that it's great to be able to talk to you because I recognize you as great in your field." And since I got this guy, and he said some complimentary things. He said, I'd like to talk to you about how to invest long term. So here's what I told LeVar, and I want you to go tell this to your kids if you find this helpful. I said, okay. I said, sure. Yeah, I'll be happy to help you. Let's set up a meeting. But I said, one thing I want you to understand, first and foremost, two things I need you to know. They're just coming to mind. One is you're already a millionaire. You're going to be a millionaire. You're going to be very successful. The reason you're going to be really successful is because everything that it took for you to become a race car driver at 17, 18 years old and to be one of the best in the world is exactly the skill set that you're going to apply that's going to make you extraordinarily successful in every area of your life. You know, like the same amount of consistent practice, focus, courage, because you're driving the car 200 and something miles an hour around this track, right? Oh, in your focus, you have to be really focused for like 2 hours straight. A lot of people can't even focus for 30 seconds. I said all these things are going to make you exceptional. So I think that if you have a child or a grandchild that's good at anything, basketball, twerking, I don't care. Like whatever they're really good at, whatever their talent is, that can translate into business and wealth and everything else. Michael Jordan's a good example of that. But then I said the second thing I want you to understand is there are people out there that will tell you that you're doing great by starting you're investing at the age of 22. That's so much better than so many other people who start at 42, 32, 52, etc. And because oh, you're starting young, this is great. And I said, and that's true. That is better than starting at 32, 42, and 52. I said, but really, I want you to also understand what you're investing for. You're not really just investing for yourself and starting early in your life. You're actually investing for your kids. I said, "Are you going to have kids one day?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you're investing for your unborn daughter or son who's going to be born 10 years from now. And what you're giving them is this gift of time. So by you starting to build wealth now for that unborn child, you're giving her a 30-year head start. Listen to me now. You're giving her a 30-year head start on the wealth building process. And I said, do you understand how much wealth any person of any income level can build if they have 30 years to build it? Imagine if you had a car and you had to drive to a destination and you had 30 years to get there. It doesn't matter how slow your car could be going 2 miles an hour and you could drive from New York to California 120 times. Do you understand? That because that's what wealth is. Wealth is nothing more than it's like this financial road and you're traveling down the road, and the further you go down the road, the more money you have. So the more time you have to travel down the road, the more wealth you will end up having because you will have covered a further distance, because distance is simply rate times time. It's how fast you're going multiplied by how long you're going there. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Let me know if you get what I'm saying. So what people get caught up in, they get fixated on the rate, how fast you're making money, how much money you make. Oh, he's making 100 bands a year. He's making 200. He's making a million a year. No, it's not. That's not the whole equation. The rate doesn't get you there. Driving fast does not get you anywhere if you don't have any time to get there. So if you got the fastest car on earth, but if you've only got 10 seconds to drive, you can only go so far. You ain't gonna travel from here to California if you ain't got time to get there. Do you understand? So no matter how much money you make or how fast you're accelerating your income accumulation process, it doesn't matter if you don't put time in the equation. Time is the water in the Kool-Aid. You cannot make Kool-Aid without water. So put the water in the damn Kool-Aid. I said, your child, you're giving her 30, it'll be 30 years before she's 20 years old. It'll be 40 years before she's 30 years old. So by you investing consistently right now for yourself and building wealth for yourself, you're going to be able to be the best dad in the world, because you'll be able to say, I love you so much that I was thinking about you before you were born. I was planning for you before you were even a concept. That's love, man. That's that intergalactic love that knows no time and no space. That love has expanded beyond the boundaries of time and space. When I talk to our little girl in the car, and I told her, I said, look, I'm your bonus dad, and my job is to be there for you whether I'm dead or alive. I will be there for you no matter what. And I want you to know that. because I'm not going to be limited by time and space. I want you to know that if I'm laying in that 6 feet underground, I'm still going to have a presence in your life, because that's what it means to have impact. That's the impact I want to have. All of you that are in here, if you are somehow affected by anything that we've talked about, that's my job. That's my goal with you. I want to have a presence in your life even when I'm dead. I want you to be like, yeah, I remember that thing Dr. Boyce said that. That's cool. That's exciting. That's the win. That's the prize. Right? I don't want to be a human. I want to be a spirit. I want to connect to energy. I want, and that to me, that's legacy. That's all these things, right? So really, I encourage you to give that to your kids. If I don't care if you're 14 years old, when people say, "Oh, wow, they're investing at 14, that's so early," and I'm sitting there thinking about the fact that that 14-year-old is going to be a 34-year-old and they're going to have kids, and so it's super early for their kids. And I literally will say that in a seminar. I'll say, well, one day you're going to have kids, and so you're also doing this for them too. So you when you see the bigger picture, that's when you really see the wealth. That's when you see the economics. That's when you see what the real power. Because if you look at most families that have real power and real wealth in America, it's usually families that have been able to engage in some consistent wealth building process across multiple generations. It ain't just a Negro who got a NBA contract, right? Or somebody who got a record deal, right? Who signed with Bad Boy Records in 2005. That ain't it. That's not where the money's at. The money's in the generational wealth. The money is in the financial consciousness. The money is in embracing the love, like the real love, what it really means to love your child and prepare them for the future and make sure that they are safe, that they are good, that they're protected from all the evil things in the world that will gladly exploit them because nobody had their back, right? And that's what we do. That's how you do it. Okay. So I want to share a couple more things. Let's go back to my Instagram real quick. I want to show you guys something. And by the way, I do have a training called How to Turn Your Child into a Millionaire. You can go to kittyboss.com to take a look if you want to. The URL is above my head, kittyboss.com. All right, so let me share something with you. This is kind of cool. I think it's very cool, and I should mention this because we got to give props and shout outs to our women when they do amazing things. So Dr. Alicia and Tiana Von Johnson and Shar Curry have created this podcast called The Real Table Talk. And they're doing an event in Chicago on December 11th. So if you live in Chicago and you want to come by, I'll be there and you can come and hang out. And these are three badass black women. As you know, my wife has a PhD in social work, and she's a licensed therapist. Tiana has done a lot of work with Master P and a lot of other people. She's an extraordinary businesswoman with a lot of followers, I think 100,000. And then Shar Curry has almost 400,000 followers. And she's this really intriguing advocate for men. And she speaks on relationships in a really profound, interesting way. And I was just casually mentioning, I said, yeah, I think the three of you would do really well together, like on an Instagram live or something. That's what I was thinking. I thought they were just going to like get together and talk one day, and they made it into a whole thing. And so they started having meetings and pulling everything together. And so there's that. So to support, and I'll be in the shadows, just cheering on my wife. But this is what these beautiful ladies are doing, and I just wanted to share that with you guys in case you wanted to check out what they're doing. I think they have an Instagram. I think their Instagram page is the Real Table Talk Pod. I don't think it's on the screen, but and the event's going to be in Chicago. And if you want to get the information, you want to join us, just go to my Instagram, Dr. Boyce Finance, and you can find it all right there on that page. All right. The other thing here too is let's see here. There was something else I wanted to show you. Oh yeah. This video, this is just kind of a quick wealth reminder in terms of little things you may or may not know about where wealth comes from. And so I'm going to turn the audio on. Let me know if you can hear this. It's similar to a video I'd done before, but I wanted to finish the job here and do something similar. So here it goes.
The best habit to grow your portfolio is patience. The best skill to grow your portfolio is research. The best way to grow your portfolio is dollar cost averaging. The best account to grow your portfolio is a brokerage with low fees. The best asset to grow your portfolio is a diversified mix of stocks. The best protection for your portfolio is risk management. The best shortcut for your portfolio is learning from proven investors. The best mindset for your portfolio is long-term thinking. The best tool for your portfolio is compound interest. The best practice for your portfolio is reviewing your positions regularly. The best supplement for your portfolio is strong financial education. Put the word stock in the comments if you're on Instagram. If you're not on Instagram,
Okay. All right. So if you want to go to Dr. Boyce Finance, you can go through the video on your own if you want to. But that's just some quick tidbit information for those that are seeking to kind of understand like the next move that you want to make and where you might want to put money to make it grow. For those that are interested in options, I just did something with an iron condor on Meta recently, and I think that that's worth exploring and taking a look at. It's a pretty interesting way to generate income, right? So if you like stock options and stuff like that or want to learn more about it, just go to drboyceprime.com, drboyceprime.com. So let me share something else. There's one more thing that I was thinking about. Oh, here we go. This was actually just kind of funny, and we can end on this. But did you know that it's harder to get a job at Walmart than it is to get into Harvard? And so the Washington Post said that there was a new Walmart that opened in DC. 23,000 people applied and there were only 600 jobs. So 2.6% were accepted. And they said at Dartmouth, the acceptance rate is 11.5%. Cornell is 14%. University of Pennsylvania is 10%. So, so just so you know, if you work at Walmart, you can say that you did better than a Harvard graduate, I guess. I don't know, you're more exclusive or something. I don't know what to make of that. But I guess what it really seems to speak to me is maybe growing economic desperation to some extent. That you have a Walmart open, they got 600 jobs available, 23,000 people apply for the job. That means that there are a lot of people out here struggling, and this fits into the narrative of the K-shaped economy they talked about, where you got people going down that are at the bottom, people at the top going up. And the people going up are the ones that are in the stock market, to be quite frank about it. And those that are going down are the ones that are relying on these corporations and job wages to pay bills. So that's why it's very important to train your child to be an investor. So yeah. So with that said, be careful out there. It's the economy's changing, and I would say for the worst, most like I feel like it's more so for the worse than the better. Actually, I don't like tariffs. I think Trump's tariffs are a terrible idea. I don't like the fact that the government tends to favor the rich. It'd be nice if we knew, for example, that Democrats were going to take care of working class people better than Republicans. And I think that they kind of would, but it's not what you think it is, right? If you really look behind the curtain, you'll find that the corporations and the billionaires are kind of running everything. And so this has created kind of a protect your own neck kind of economy. So this is why, again, that critical thinking piece is so important, because if you are a person that digs into systems and commits to doing things that people indoctrinate you to do, they're going to probably guide you down the wrong path. So paths have to be individual and specific, but if you can get over that hump and really truly think this thing through and what's really going to work for you, then the economy can actually be great for you. You can actually make a lot of money. I know a lot of people that make a lot of money. So don't think everybody is out here suffering, right? The people that tend to suffer are the ones who are following the crowd. Do not follow the crowd. That's my 2 cents. That's my belief. All right. So anyway, I'm going to get out of here. It was great to see you. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. As you know, the Black Wealth Calendar for 2026 is still available. They make great Christmas gifts. And so feel free to go to blackwealthcalendar.com. That's blackwealthcalendar.com. Also, if you're not on the text list for this class, text the word morning to the number 87948, and I'll send you a reminder when we meet for class. Text morning to 87948. And throughout the day, sometimes you'll get stuff from me. So I hope that that's okay. So God bless you. Have a great day, everybody.